Hi, it's Steph, and today we're going to talk about fall bulbs you can plant for spring blooms that deer don't touch. It is now fall, and all of your fall planted spring blooming bulbs have showed up at your local garden centers and nurseries. And it is really tempting to go out and buy a large assortment of these bulbs and plant them all out in anticipation of a beautiful display after a long, cold, and dark winter. But if you plant the wrong type of bulb, it's possible that you won't get any blooms, particularly if you have a lot of pest pressure in your garden. For me, I'm not able to plant tulips without being very vigilant from the point that I plant the bulbs until the point where I get the blooms. Because as soon as I plant them out, I immediately have to start deterring squirrels. Squirrels are very attracted to tulip bulbs, and they love to dig them up and take them to their dens or wherever it is that they hang out for the winter. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can delay planting your tulip bulbs until squirrels are less active in very late fall or early winter, as long as your soil is still workable. You can also sprinkle things on the soil after you've planted your bulbs, like pepper, cinnamon, or blood meal. Some gardeners even use a method of putting a layer of mesh, or what should I say, chicken wire on top of where they've planted their bulbs, and then they cover that up with some soil or some mulch as an extra layer of protection to prevent squirrels from digging up those bulbs. And that's just at the point of planting. If your tulip bulbs survive the squirrels, now in late winter, early spring, when they start popping through the soil, you're going to immediately have to start repelling the deer. Deer absolutely love tulips in my garden. They eat them like candy. So if I don't start spraying them right away, I won't get to see the beautiful blooms from all the hard work that I had in the fall to plant them. So for me, it's really difficult to keep tulips going from the point of planting until the time that I get blooms. But there are other alternatives if you have a lot of pest pressure in your garden like I do, such as squirrels, rodents like chipmunks, or deer and rabbits. And we're going to go over some of those spring blooms that you can plant that are more pest resistant and still enjoy a beautiful display in spring. Starting with the quintessential spring flower, the daffodil. Daffodils are such a cheery and welcome sight at the end of a long winter. They're the first flowers that we typically see other than crocus, and daffodils are pest resistant. Daffodil bulbs and blooms are not bothered by any pests. They can be planted and they come up without issue each year, and in fact they naturalize if they're happy, meaning that they will multiply for you, and each year you will actually get more and more blooms. They need about 4 to 6 hours of sunlight to bloom best, and there are so many varieties. They no longer come in just the traditional yellow trumpet variety. We have doubles, we have the trumpets, we have the ruffly ones. There are also daffodils that come in different heights. There are short, medium, and tall ones, different size blooms. And in addition to that, you can also choose so many different colors. There are yellow ones, white ones, peach and pink ones, some that are all white, yellow and white. I mean, the varieties are endless. And there's also different bloom times when it comes to daffodils. So you can buy daffodils that bloom in early season, mid-season, or late season. So you can extend your display of beautiful daffodils throughout the whole spring. Alliums are another pest-resistant, beautiful spring bloom. Now, alliums have only recently started making their way into the big box stores and local garden centers in the last few years. In fact, I planted alliums for the first time 3 or 4 years ago, and I had a couple of neighbors comment on how pretty and cool and different those flowers were. And that's because they're not a spring flower that is very common, although they are becoming more common. And just like daffodils, they also come in so many different varieties. You can get purple alliums, pink alliums, white. You can also get them in different heights. There are shorter ones and taller ones. Different bloom size. There are smaller bloom heads. There are larger ones. They can go from the size of a golf ball to the size of a tennis ball to the size of a grapefruit. There are just so many beautiful alliums to choose from. There are some that bloom early, mid, and late spring. Muscari, or grape hyacinth. These are also another really good spring bloom that come in a variety of colors. I've seen them in purple, in a lavender that almost looks blue, in white. I've even seen pink. There's also the traditional hyacinth. It's an early spring bloomer and comes in so many beautiful colors. But its most notable attribute is its wonderful fragrance. And because they're so strongly scented, they keep the deer away. Anemone. I came across this variety called Blanda. These are also known as Grecian windflower. They are a short bloom standing only at 4 to 8 inches tall. They have a daisy-like flower and fern-like foliage. They spread out to form a carpet of flowers in spring and are deer and pest resistant. Dutch iris, another great spring blooming option, especially if you enjoy cut flowers and making arrangements. They have a pretty orchid-like bloom, long straight stems, and last a long time in floral arrangements. So you see, there are a lot of options when it comes to spring blooming bulbs that you can plant that rodents and pests in your garden, such as deer and rabbits, will stay away from. So instead of planting things like tulips that will require a lot of extra work on your part, you can opt to plant these other types of spring blooming bulbs that will require a little less work. And in my case, I tend to save things like tulips for when I can buy them on 75% off clearance at the end of the season. That way it's not so much of a financial investment, but a little bit of a work investment to plant them. And I also like to plant tulips in my containers because I feel like I have a little more control over the pest situation when I have them in containers. I do still have to spray them with repellent, but it's just a little bit easier for me than coming out and spraying large areas of the garden to keep the deer away. The tulips I grew last year turned out so beautiful that of course it makes me want to plant some every year. So for now, I'll continue to grow tulips, either in ground or in containers. But this comes with a commitment of spraying for deer as soon as the tulips start emerging in early spring. You'll want to be consistent with spraying repellent on your tulips, at least once a week, and reapplying after it rains, since the rain washes the spray repellents off of the foliage. I have a few different repellents that I like to alternate between so that I keep the deer in my garden on their toes. However, if you have just one, that's fine. Just be consistent with your spraying. So I hope that I've given you some ideas today on some beautiful spring blooming bulbs that you can plant in your garden if you have a lot of pest pressure so that you can still enjoy a beautiful spring display. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.